Morning. Today we are correcting PO69. We're working with the circumference of a circle. Remember, the circumference is that distance going all the way around the circle. Our formula for that is 2 times pi times the r. If we are given the r, the radius, we use this formula. If we're given that diameter, remember the diameter is the one that goes all the way across the circle. Our circumference is pi times the diameter. So when we look at what we worked on last week, the radius is when it goes halfway. So we multiply the radius times pi times 2 because we want it to be all the way across. So that's why we multiply by 2. So you can see I have two different answers because I put in the pi button and I times it by 2 times the radius, or I put in 3.14 times 2 times the radius. So they're going to be very close numbers, but the decimals will be a little bit different if you do 3.14 versus the pi button, because the pi button goes farther into your decimals. So for A, it could be 31.42 or 31.40, depending on which method you use, the pi button or 3.14. We round to that hundredth place. So B was 37.70 or 37.68. C was 56.55 or 56.52. Again, key thing to have is what math we are doing. So I'm either multiplying it by 2 if I have that radius, or I'm not if I already have the diameter. The diameter is 2 radiuses, so you don't have to multiply by 2 then. So D would be 50.27 or 50.24. We did that row together last week. Now for ones we did on our own. E is 69.12 or 69.08. F is 94.25 or 94.22. G is 81.68 or 81.69. I think that's a 9. Or is that a 4? That's a 4. 81.64. H is 43.98 or 43.96. Any question on that middle row on how I got one of the answers, one of those circumferences? Liam, were you able to figure out where you went wrong? Liv, did you figure out where you went wrong, or do you want me to walk you through one? So, and that's okay. You just got to let me know. So let's look at E. If we have the line going from the outside to the middle, is that the radius or the diameter? Radius. That radius is the short one. So I know if I have the radius, I'm going to use this formula. I need to multiply it by a 2 and then times it by pi. So I have 2 times pi times the 5. Oops, wrong one. Sorry. I have 2 times pi times 11. So I can either use the pi button on my calculator or I can use 3.14. Either way, we're going to get very similar answers, rounding to the hundredth place. So 2 times 11 was 22 times pi gives me that 69.12. So we're not dividing by 2 on all of these, right? I did tell us that if we had the diameter, if you divided it by 2, that would get you the radius to use this formula, but then you have to multiply it by 2 again. So we talked about how that's when, if we're given the diameter, that's when we'd use the centimeter equals pi times diameter. So we don't have to divide at all. You're either multiplying the radius times the pi times 2, or if you're given the diameter, you're timesing it by pi. Does that make a little more sense? So, Madison, that's great saying, oh, I'm going to stay after for help, but I just walked us through it again. Did it make sense, or do you want me to do another one?
No, it's clicking a little better than it was.
Okay, so do you have the two formulas written down?
Yeah.
So you have 2 times 5 times r. Do you have pi times diameter? So remember how we talked about pi times diameter last week. So you have to look, do I have the radius, it's halfway, or am I given the diameter? So that tells me which formula I'm going to use. So you're always going to multiply by pi, and then you have to decide, do I also have to multiply by 2 if it's a radius? So on our last line, we have for H, or I, sorry, we have 56.55 or 56.52. J is 6.28 or 6.28. K is 106.81 or 106.76. And L is 157.08 or 157.00. If you do not round to that 100th place correctly, is it going to be correct? No. Rounding matters. I have both numbers written down. If you got 56.54, that's not one of the answers. It will be wrong. You have to round correctly. Remember, if that 1,000th place, the number that comes after the 100th, if that 1,000th place is 5 or higher, that's when we round up. If it's 4 or less, that 100th place stays the same. Samantha.
For I got 61.2.
So what did you multiply together?
18 times 2.14.
So put it into your calculator again. So how did you do the longhand?
I used my calculator.
Okay, I am guessing you punched in a number wrong. Because that when we're just straight up multiplying across, usually it's because somebody puts in a number wrong. So instead of 18, maybe you put in a 19, or you made some little mistake. So if we were to multiply, was it the 18 one? This one?
Yeah.
So if I have 18 times 3.14. That's when you should have, if you did the 3.14, you should have gotten 56.52. So that it just tells me you put in a number incorrectly. And make sure you're getting a new calculator for at school. Any other one? Okay, if you are watching this at home, I hope you are well, and I hope to see you soon. Have a wonderful day.